Silivea J here with the Out of Bondage Music Radio Show. I have on the line with me someone whom I've interviewed before in the past, and he is the Chief of Police, the Acting Chief of Police of Wilmington, North Carolina, or Chief Donny Williams. And so he has decided to come on the radio show again and have this conversation with me. So this is the first official conversation I have had with him. And Donnie, you've been Chief of Police in Wilmington for how long now? Has it been 3 years?
4 years.
It's been 4 years. Time really does fly. So let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to ask you is, at a time where everyone is fighting for position, so many are taking from community instead of contributing to community. I remember when you created a space that gave back to community before it was popular. You didn't do it for attention grabbing, and I believe that you were, a general officer. But I interviewed you during that time, and you talked about how you were making moves to initiate or inspire the normal beat where officers would go door to door, get to know their neighbors, like they used to do. And additionally, you had also created a cop camp for kids. You told me how you yourself, growing up in public housing, had been inspired by a police officer, which I don't know if many people know, but you were also a fire chief at some point.
My inspiration to become a Wilmington police officer, and I consider myself a Wilmington police officer that happens to be the chief. I'm not the chief, even though I am the chief, but at the end of the day, I am a Wilmington police officer, meaning I am willing to do what any other police officer should be willing to do to help our citizens. That means if I need to direct traffic, if I need to pull a broom out the back of my truck and sweep the roadway, that is what I'm willing to do, and I have done those things recently within the last month.
Okay.
But the point is, what inspired me to become a police officer was watching Wilmington police officers when I was a young man growing up in the city of Wilmington in public housing. And those officers were the late Thad Waddell, the late Gerald Lincoln, and retired Captain Bruce Hickman. I thought those individuals were the epitome of being police officers, and that's what I got to see. And with seeing those individuals, and I grew up with a single mom, so a little help from the community because I had people in the community pushing me, helping me, and then of course God had this all planned out for me. So that's the big part of this. So that's what inspired and drove me to be a Wilmington police officer. And bottom line, at the end of the day, I wanted to help people, and that's what's driven me for the past 32 years. And a lot of the programs, the ideas we come up with, it's about helping people. I had the pleasure of meeting the city manager, real impressive, smart guy. He was going through our training facility over at the Haynes Placewell facility. And I actually was the project director of that facility. I oversaw the design and construction of it. It is state of the art. It is a model that other police departments look to throughout the country. And he asked me this. He was like, this training facility is huge. You should be very proud of this. And I looked at him and I didn't blink an eye. I was like, no, it was just another project. I'm proud of it, but what I am proud of is that cop camp program. Something that I envisioned as a young officer back in 1995. And it was about giving back because someone had given to me, and those three officers I talked about earlier, they were part of that giving that was given to me. So you got to pay it back. So that cop camp is one of the things I'm most proud of because it allows our officers to get out into the community, engage the youth, build those relationships.
Something that happened in the news recently that really touched so many hearts. And there's a lot going on social media where a lot of officers came out, and I'm going to say her name because every time I think about a lot of the travesties that are happening still, I cannot forget the name Sonia Massey. And I wonder, in the event that we had gotten back to just everyday policing, getting to know your neighbors, how much different could that situation have turned out? So speak to that, if you will, please.
Sonia Massey bothered me like nothing else has probably bothered me in my past 32 years being a police officer. George Floyd was troubling, but
Mhm.
Sonya Massey, it was bad.
Mm.
It was despicable. It was
Mhm.
disgusting.
Mhm.
It is the worst thing I've seen. And I'm gonna be honest. When that thing first happened with George Floyd, I probably looked at the video of George Floyd once or twice.
Mhm.
I know I looked at it at least one time,
Mhm.
maybe two times. Sonya Massey, Silivea, I probably looked at that video 20 or 30 times.
Yeah.
I've looked at it just repeatedly that this lady that is in crisis, she is clearly in crisis.
Yeah.
She is in crisis, and she calls for help,
Mhm.
and you shoot her in her face.
Yeah.
You shoot her in her face, and she calls for help.
Yeah.
And it's just,
It
to
is.
watch it, it's bad, and it impacts me because I'm a police officer, and people are gonna see me and my police officers that way. And
Well,
I mean,
and you're a man of faith.
But it's bad, Silivea, and
Yeah.
I just can't say it. And I know people were upset and they were protesting about George Floyd, and they have a right to be. But people should really be upset about that video.
Yeah,
They
we
should
cannot.
really be upset about what they saw there. What happened? She was clearly in crisis.
We
She was in
cannot.
crisis.
We cannot forget Sonya. You know, I never watched the video because I could not allow myself to. You know, we've been in crisis, calling on the Lord. I can't imagine calling on the Lord with all of my heart and having someone in that kind of level of authority to slay me. This is not the God, I serve. But the thing is so many people in blue, so many officers were in sync with the community concerning the Sonya Massey. And I don't want to say incident. I call it a massacre. There's so many layers to what you just said. And, I urge people, don't just see anybody as just an officer. I mean, there are bad actors everywhere. But something has to be done about what causes that sort of thing to happen. What things dehumanize a person to the degree that someone, as you said, was in crisis, was just slain. And so she will remain on my heart. I know, and I know yours. I'm sorry you had to witness that after so many years of serving community.
Yes, you would just think we were beyond that, and if it wasn't for the technology, what I've always put in the back of my head since seeing that, would we even know about that? If it wasn't for that body camera, that Exxon camera, would we even know about that? What narrative would that have put? Oh, she charged me.
Right.
She had a knife. What would have happened if we didn't have body camera?
I think what hurts the most for me is the part where we just disregarded that she still had life there. It was, I've washed my hands of this. She wasn't a deer. She wasn't a bear. She wasn't, game. But to just discard her as a hunt, and no need to try to revive. I intended to kill her. I said it, and I did it.
Yes,
so,
my heart goes out to
her family.
Yes, just what they have gone through.
And to the nation of people who keep suffering every time they see, something like that, where a mother is slain or a child, whether that it was by the hand of someone else or not, it just opens up a wound. It opens up a wound to carelessness and to lack of passion, lack of compassion. And we just need to get back to that. So thank you, Chief Williams, for at least speaking to that, so that you all see. People want to know that those who are called to protect and serve them actually see them, really, that they see them. And I don't think it's a great percentage of men in blue, men and women in blue, that are like this young man. And so we have to follow that story. We have to keep pressing in and making sure that there's justice served.
Yes.
I have 3 more questions for you. My questions are long because this is going to be, look, this interview, if it has to take all day, it's okay. You can always fast forward if you're watching online. But I suggest you stay the course. at a time when everyone, and this, it almost seems like you answered that in that last question, but I want to be a little more tailored in this one, because at a time when it seems, when everyone seems to be at odds with each other, no matter what team you're on, how do you maintain that peace and that calm that I know you have to have? I mean, it's required to be a police chief in this climate. You represent during a time that was a challenge. I mean, we're going to get to that later on. But for someone like yourself who represents black, red, white, and blue, how do you maintain the calm amidst the crazy?
That is a question that I'm going to give you a short, simple answer. And you're going to probably think this is just so simple. You have to take them day by day. Silivea, it takes a lot of prayer, a lot of faith, a lot of people covering me, and you just have to dig into it day by day. And it has been very difficult these past 4 years. That's the best way that I'm going to say with that. It has been very difficult walking in these shoes that I've walked in.
Well, it has been. I think that that's a very explicit answer. I don't think it's simple at all, because the Bible says that we are supposed to pray for our leaders and those who have charge over us, and that is regardless of what side you're on. You are charged to pray for them, because at the end of the day, if there's someone holding a tool that can affect you as well as your enemy, or if you're the enemy and they're holding a tool that is, that can affect you, whether it's friendly fire or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is you need to pray for that person. You need to, pray that God gives them the good sense to do the right thing while they have charge over you. How
I've gotten through it at the end of the day is the support of this community, and I have support within the Wilmington Police Department. There's some men and women in the department that support me, and I appreciate them and my supporters there, my supporters in the community. That's what gets me through it, and it's mainly the community and me knowing in the back of my mind that I put my hand on this Bible 32 years ago, and I swore this oath to serve and protect this community. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, the community. And when I say community, I am not the police chief just for the inner city. Right. I'm the police chief for 51 square miles of city limits.
Right.
And I strategically and purposely, I just don't ride in the inner city where I'm really known and where I worked at a lot of my career. I'll spend time out on the east end of the city and ride in neighborhoods where I don't even know where I'm at, because I've never been in that neighborhood before, but I try to make it my business every week to ride through a different neighborhood that I've never been in. And with all of the construction that's going on in the city, that happens a lot. There are a lot of neighborhoods I've never been in. And I was like, wow, I didn't know they built that over there. So
yeah.
I do, and I'll roll the window down, and I'll let people see me. And sometimes, I may stop and talk with somebody, but I want to be mindful of that. Being the first chief of color, I'm not just the chief of police for the black community. I'm the chief of police for this entire city. Right. This entire city. All 120 plus thousand, all 51 plus square miles.
What I love about that is that you say that, and many leaders of all cultures. I've noticed that, though, in particular cultures, that has to be said. It shouldn't have to be said. If someone is appointed, no matter who they are or what they look like, they are here to protect and serve the whomever. But it's oftentimes that when you're of minority ethnicity or whatever, I don't want to be politically incorrect when I say this, but you always have to say, well, I'm here for everyone. Well, you should be, because when other people are in charge, they're there for everyone, or at least you think so. You shouldn't have to say that, but I'm glad that you did. I have another question, which is sort of a side question. I said I had two more, but this is just a side question. There is something that your department does, and for the first time that it has been done in Wilmington, is that the officers ride around with their lights on a solid blue line instead of flashing. And I think that is the coolest thing. When I saw it, I thought, this is wonderful. What is that, and what inspired that? Because I think, and I just mentioned this the other day to my husband again, it's been going on for several years now. I think at one point you all stopped, but then you started again. But the one thing that I think it does is, number one, hey, there's an officer. I see them. I need help. Let me wave them down. It's a clear-cut visual on where you all are. It also, number two, I think it serves as a feeling of protection for those who feel that feeling, that, hey, these guys are out here doing their work. But it's also one of those things like when you see that blue line, you're like, oop, let me slow down.
So the cruise lights, and that's what it's called.
Okay, the cruise
lights. It's called cruise lights. There's a feature on the light bars, and you can actually do it with unmarked cars, depending on how they're wired, where those lights can be solid blue.
Okay.
And around 2021, 2022, we were using it when our officers would get out on focus patrols. And a focus patrol is when we're paying attention to something where they've had a problem or we're trying to prevent something. When they would get out on a focus patrol, or what we like to call a community contact, they would put the lights on so they could be seen.
Mm-hmm.
One of our deputy chiefs at the time, Ben Kennedy, he came up with an idea. He was like, well, why don't they just ride around with them on all the time?
Love that.
And I was like, okay, I didn't think about them riding around with it all the time, but let's try it. But before we make that final decision, let's see what our community thinks about that. Mm-hmm. And when we say community, we mean people that live in the city of Wilmington that actually pay taxes and fund the Wilmington Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
So I challenged our PIO, Public Information Officer, our community engagement folks, to do a survey. And I was like, I want us to do a public survey to see what the community thinks about us doing this. And I think we did a trial period, and during the trial period, we had a survey going on. And I think we ended up getting 5,000 responses back from this survey. And then we had to muddle through all of them, and we threw them out if you were not a city of Wilmington resident.
Okay.
We had people from Brunswick County, we had people from Pender County commenting, and we were like, okay, you need to worry about kind of what your law enforcement that serves your community is doing. And I think at the end of the day, we ended up with 4,000 that we could verify that were city of Wilmington residents.
Okay.
Couldn't verify it was a city of Wilmington resident, we threw it out.
Okay.
And I think it was 3,000 or 4,000, again, it was a couple of years ago. And there were like 3 or 4 questions, and all of the questions were like in the 90th percentile. It was like 97% of the citizens wanted to see this.
Wow.
The numbers were high on the citizens that wanted to see this. So I was like,
wow.
We're going to do this if the citizens want it. And not changing the subject, but we've looked at other ways to involve citizens in the policing process.
Mm-hmm.
When we do some promotional panels, we involve citizens. And when we name our police animals, we get input from the community on that.
Now, is that something unique to your department? Because that's kind of the next question I was going to ask. Is that something unique just to your department, or is that a model that you picked up from someplace?
No, it's not a model that we picked up. One of our former K9 handlers, we were getting ready to purchase some new dogs, and retired Corporal Curdy Vitellani, he threw that idea out there. Why don't you let the community see? And we did it, and ever since we've done it with dogs, we've done it with horses, and it has been very, very popular. The community has actually named our last 2 or 3 horses, our last couple of dogs, and it's real neat to engage the community, and then they remember the animal. And I was actually doing what I like to call my community engagement day this past Thursday, and I was riding one of the electric bikes around the city.
Mm-hmm. Those things are fast.
They are. They run up 28 miles an hour.
Ooh, I want one so bad.
And we went into Independence Mall at the food court for lunch. And the reason we picked the food court, we could bring the bike inside with us and watch it the whole time we sit there eating.
Yeah.
So a citizen actually came up to me, and she lives downtown, and she commented on Romeo. Romeo is one of our horses.
Okay.
And I just thought that was pretty cool that a citizen
knew the name.
Horse by name, knew Romeo by name, and he's one of 5 horses. 5 horses we have right now, but she specifically knew Romeo. She didn't bring a Ranger, Willie, Comet, or Elton. She just honed in on Romeo.
I love it. I love horses. I have family members that ride, and I'm telling you, they're cowboys and cowgirls, and I just love that the city, that the community are getting to name service animals. That is so cool. That is how you get people plugged in and make people feel a part of what you're doing. But I was going to ask, how would you like to be remembered? You do so much. Like, you were an acting chief police. You were an acting fire chief while you were a captain on the police department in 2 different municipalities, and then you build things.
I am still the fire chief at the Nebraska
Are
Fire
you still?
Department.
Why are you multitasking?
So some of the things we have going on right now is our women's self-defense class.
Okay.
We have a group of female officers. When we built that training facility, we purposely built that facility to be able to engage in our community and not just use it for training police officers. Another thing that's dear to me is salaries and benefits for our officers need some serious overhaul. And affordable housing for the city of Wilmington, affordable housing is a big issue.
Wait a minute. Wait. Did you say affordable housing for serving officers?
Yes, for them being able to
live in the
at
city.
The wage that we pay them to be able to afford to live in the city. So one of the things we're working on now is a grant to hopefully get a voucher program in place. And if we get this voucher program in place, officers that live in the city and possibly some that live out into the unincorporated areas of Hanover County would receive a housing assistance voucher. We had this program back in the 90s. This is not a brand new idea that I came up with. We actually had this program in the 90s, and we had about 8 to a dozen officers where they could live in certain communities in the city with provide housing assistance for them. And we're trying to bring that program back, but we want to be able to do 2 cohorts of 50 officers. So this program has the potential to impact 50 to 100 officers if we can get the funding and make this thing work.
Godspeed to you in everything that you do. I'm so glad that you gave us this kind of time, because I know that, time is not one of those things, busy people, especially when they're fire chief and chief of police. I mean, who says that you can't do all things in Christ who strengthens you? I mean, so how about that? I appreciate you giving us the time here at Out of Bondage Music Radio program. We appreciate you so much for coming on today and sharing your heart about all of it.
Anytime, Silivea, and I will be following the Sonia Massey case closely.
Yes.
And I hope the rest of the country is following this closely. And I don't know if you can tell earlier, I'll sometimes get teary-eyed.
You were emotional, yeah,
case.
And it's rare to see you. It's rare to see you emotional.
And I have been following that case very, 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 very closely, because at the end of the day, my reputation is on the line because I'm a police officer.
Yes.
And that connects to every single police officer in this country. And as I said in one of those national interviews that I didn't really want to do, the question was asked of me, basically, are black officers safer than officers that are not of color?
No.
And I said this to people, that you have to judge people by the color of their heart, not the color of their skin.
That's right.
You have to judge them by the color of their heart. And I meant that. You judge by the color of their heart.
And when situations like that happens, it makes everything dangerous for everyone. It makes everything dangerous for everyone involved. That officer made it hard for every officer. Period.
Yes, he did.
And no matter what color they are on the, skin color, but it makes it hard for good actors of all color, and so not just him. You've seen it all over the country. You've seen it in Memphis. You have that trial going on in Memphis right now. I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, but that's with any culture and with any organization or with anything. It's always a smaller percentage that makes it harder for the larger numbers, and we seem to we major on the minor instead of minoring on the, and then we minor on the major. That's just what we do, and it needs to stop. But Sonia Massey is one of those things that Sonia Massey case is one of those things that all Americans should be following. Absolutely. And this is not, hatred for, officers, that this is not what that is about. This is about a troubled individual that was put in authority and should not have been.
This is Chief Donny Williams of the Wilmington Police Department, and you're listening to my friend Silivea J with the Out of Bondage radio show.